Welcome back. This is Luke Smith, and today we're going to be looking at some questions from the school community. We've got a bunch of awesome members, like-minded people on the free school community, asking questions, sharing comments, sharing information. So let's jump into it. Brian, what do we have on the board for today?
Yeah, I'm Bryan. I work with Luke in the school community. So first, what's the average price per square foot for a vacant lot? For example, how much money is too much money to pay for less than 1 acre? What factors do we need to consider? Market rate, location, etc.
Okay, that's a couple questions in there. But basically about price per acre, price per square. They're asking about price per square foot. Who's this question from?
Well, this is from Ebony.
Thank you, Ebony, for asking questions. And everyone else, feel free to ask questions too. We'll try to hit as many of them as we can. So Ebony's asking about price per square foot. What's a good price? How do you figure out price per square foot on? So I'm talking about high traffic retail properties is what I think she's asking about and what we're looking at. What I've done is look at data. I love looking at data and reverse engineering these properties. So I look at data and I've done mailers all across the country, every state except for Alaska, and all the rest of them, right? And we sent mailers, looked at high traffic retail properties that have like where McDonald's would go kind of property, like a 1 acre kind of property out in front of a Walmart or something. And where there's a lot of people coming and going, or in front of a Kroger or in front of a grocery store, those kinds of properties, and made bids on them. And I find them in the data and I find them looking at traffic and I put them in the data sets and I look at what the most recent ones have traded for. And if you go look at those across the whole country, you start seeing what they trade for. And some of them you'll see are like $250,000 properties. And you look at the quality of those properties, and they're usually not right in front of the Walmart, not right in front of the grocery store. They're kind of like second row or around the corner. Or they're weird. They're hard to get to. The access is funky or the topography is funky. They're not the most desirable ones. The $500,000 ones, and this is just generally speaking, the $500,000-ish ones are usually more front and center, like out in front of the Walmart, for example, and they have access and there's a stoplight there and people slow down. The traffic's not 55 miles an hour. It's 25 or 35 or maybe 45. And people can see what's going on in the property. Those you might get to $500,000 kind of price tag for if you're trying to sell them, if you're trying to buy them. And then there's some of them that are like 750 grand. And that's usually better neighbors. So it's bigger neighbors, more going on. And then some of them are $1 million or more than 1 million. And those are really good neighbors, A+ locations, tons of traffic, lots of income, lots of business going on in the area. The neighbors are doing really good numbers. They're doing a lot of sales. And, the local McDonald's is doing like 3,000 customers a day instead of 1,000 customers a day. Like they're doing a lot more business. So that's kind of the scale. I like to think about it as the use. Who can use that property? Who can fit on that property? So if we start looking at dollars per square foot, if we look at the third of an acre or half an acre one, lots of times it's the oil change or the Waffle House or the coffee shop kind of smaller footprint that fits in there. Maybe we start getting up to a Taco Bell or something. But it's usually the smaller ones that fit in there, and it's usually a little bit smaller price tag. Not always, but usually, or smaller rent that you can get out of them. But if you got half an acre, you start getting half an acre, you get more of the Taco Bells and those kinds of footprints. They fit a lot better. You start getting the 2,500 square foot ones, you can get a whole bunch of different QSRs in there that fit those sizes, 0.6 acre, 0.7, 0.8. You start getting up to 1 and 1.25. You can start fitting the Chick-fil-A's and the Raising Cane's and the bigger ones in there. And they can pay a lot more rent and they can be a lot more. So I don't think it's really price per square foot that makes sense, but who can fit on that property? I think the use of that property fits the price a lot more. And I just think about it as the use. Could we fit 2 of those QSRs on that one property? Could we put them in one building? Could we get more creative? The deal this morning was dentist shop on one side and chicken shop on the other, drive-through on the right and dentist on the left, right? And put them on the same property. And you can get a lot more money out of that than one drive-through on the same property. I think that's even a better way to look at it. You get more creative in how much you can fit on there. So price per use, please think about price per use. I think you'll get more accurate at figuring these out. What else we got?
Ebony's next question is, what's up with deed restrictions? I don't understand why a company that vacates a building would care about what another company sells afterwards.
It's a good question. So here's one that I pulled up. You might not be able to tell the brand of this by just looking at it, but if you've been to enough Chick-fil-A's, this is an older Chick-fil-A. This has got the the style of Chick-fil-A's. I think these were the early 2000s. I might be wrong, but Chick-fil-A is synonymous. They do that a lot. They'll grow out of a building like this, and they want more drive-through lanes and more just they got too much business for the size of the property. The city's probably trying to give them fines because they block up the roads and stuff. There's so many people trying to get through here. And so they'll go buy a bigger property up the street, or they'll ground lease a bigger property. Lots of times they ground lease Chick-fil-A, they'll ground lease someone else's property up the street, and they'll build a bigger one and operate it. And in their wake, they leave the old building, and they don't want anyone else competing with them in that same marketplace. And so they leave restrictions on that building. Even when they rented it, they lease the property from the landowner. The landowner owns this thing after they leave, and they're stuck with the restrictions. It was part of the deal to get Chick-fil-A in the first place. If Chick-fil-A signed up on my property, I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll take these horrible restrictions because I get Chick-fil-A and I could go sell it as a Chick-fil-A. But they'll say no chicken, no, none of this, none of that, all these kinds of things, and they leave the restrictions on there. It's usually for competitive advantages. They don't want someone else competing with them in the same, using their old infrastructure to compete with them. And most of these Chick-fil-A deals are ground lease deals. Chick-fil-A paid to build the building. They can say whatever they want if they're doing that. It wasn't the landlord that paid to build the building for them. So it's really easy for them to get away with those restrictions.
Thanks, Luke. Next one is, what's the average size for a QSR or vacant building, including the parking lot? For example, is half an acre too small to purchase?
Yeah. So here's one we were looking at earlier today with some of the other guys, and this one's like a third of an acre. It's in between Popeyes and a brand new Chase Bank, and they're talking about dollars per square foot. I think Chase Bank's going right into this shopping center, and they've got a little more access and stuff. This access is back around the corner. This is probably a wet property, but a third of an acre. I mean, we could still get a coffee shop in here or an oil change shop or somebody to fit that. But you're asking about a half an acre. Does a half an acre work? I think if we can fit some of those users on a third of an acre, we can really fit them on a half of an acre. And I think it really depends on the setbacks and the constraints of the property. Like this particular one just has the access on one side. It's not like you can flow through. You got to come in, go around, and come back out. You got to have that flow all the way through. You got to have enough parking to meet the parking requirements. There might be a need to have where the water goes. Like if you got to have the runoff water, you might not be able to use these ponds that are over here. They're part of the rest of the shopping center because this particular piece is not with the whole rest of this development. It's a standalone. There's a lot of attributes that go into the usability of that property. So like part of that thing might be on a hill, or there might be easements. Other ones, it's cross-access easements for the neighbors to cross through there you can't mess with. That might take part of it away. You can't just say this acreage works and this acreage doesn't. You got to take the different attributes in there and fit them accordingly. I think you can learn a lot more by looking at a lot of what the other, like just in this example, you can look at Starbucks and Chase and Popeyes and McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts, Wells Fargo, O'Reilly's. You can see what size properties they're using. You can do that in lots of different markets too. You just start getting an idea. If you look at this Culver's, it's going to be a lot bigger. A lot of these other sites, they're looking at doing a lot more traffic through here. So if you want to get Culver's, try to get a bit bigger property. Get the bigger rents out of a Culver's, the Dunkin' Donuts, or one of these others. I think if you reverse engineer what other people are building on, you got a particular brand that you like, that you think goes there, go look up a whole bunch of that brand's locations. Are they fitting on the half an acre that you're asking about? Are most of their properties 1.5 acres? Like these Culver's. Good luck getting a Culver's on this third of an acre kind of property. But somebody else, I think, will fit there really well.
We got one more question. How can you tell if a building is currently being rented out?
Okay, so I was searching up an example for the Chick-fil-A. And so we got a whole bunch of the bright, shiny pictures of Chick-fil-A's that are up for sale, these big dollars on them. And they say, Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A. They're bragging about Chick-fil-A because Chick-fil-A's name sells. And as you go down the list, Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A, they're all bragging about Chick-fil-A. And then you got this one. The picture doesn't fit. This looks like someone whipped out their cell phone and took a picture. It doesn't look like they hired the professional to come in with a drone and get the perfect angle and the perfect light and everything, and then photo edit it up from there. This picture stands out. Look at this price, 1.3. Look at all the other ones around it, 6, 6, 3, 7, 3, 5. This price stands out like a sore thumb. This picture stands out like a sore thumb. It doesn't fit. This is the example I just showed you for the Chick-fil-A. This one is vacant. This is a vacant one. Chick-fil-A is a harder one to go find tenants for because of all the restrictions. I think that's a good example of finding one that's not rented out. This is a vacant, and it says former Chick-fil-A vacant building. So oftentimes, here's another one. This one doesn't even have a price. There's another goofy photo. It doesn't match that bright, fresh, sparkly photo. It looks like you got some clear mountain air going in the background. This one actually does look like nice air. Oh, we're in Colorado. Looks like a nice blue sky in the background, but it's a cell phone picture. Somebody took out their phone and took a picture of this standing there in front of the shop. They didn't have a professional come in and take this picture. And you can just, yeah, those pictures are sore thumb. That's usually the ones that need a new tenant and a new salesman to go show off the brand new sparkly building.
That's awesome, Luke. That was all of our questions. If people want to find out more, where can they go?
Yeah, so we've got this community set up on, we'll put a link in the description of this video that you can follow to get back to the school community. We've got a couple hundred like-minded people talking about different high traffic retail properties, comparing, contrasting. And I do live sessions on a pretty regular basis. You can check out the calendar and chime into those, and I answer questions about properties, and I show different deals. And I learn a lot by people asking amazing questions. And a lot of other people like to listen in, and we all learn from each other. I think the community makes a stronger action in the marketplace. So follow the link in the description below.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.